The galaxy had always feared humans, but never enough to truly respect them. Commander Isla Ren had changed that. She was one of humanity's finest, a Terran Special Forces operative whose combat record was the stuff of military legend. Her name was whispered among the hardened veterans of the galaxy. She had led soldiers across death worlds, survived entire sieges, and once defeated a Zarnathi warlord in hand-to-hand combat. To the people of Earth, she was a war hero. To the Galactic High Command, she was a problem. The problem wasn't that she lost battles she hadn't. It was that she disobeyed orders on the colony world of Katria 7. Under a full-scale invasion by Korgan swarms, the command from the Galactic Council had been clear: retreat and abandon the outpost. Let the civilians fall. The numbers didn't justify a rescue, but Isla Ren didn't see numbers, she saw a people. She defied orders, risked her life, stayed behind with the skeleton crew and fought off the swarm for 11 days until Terran evac ships could slip through. The blockade. 7,000 civilians survived because she refused to be a bystander. That act should have earned her a medal. Instead, it earned her a trial. The Zarian Tribunal, a pseudo-judicial body operated by the Galactic Command, served one purpose: to ensure loyalty, not justice. The charges were formal insubordination, reckless command, and endangerment of strategic assets. Her defense was airtight. Earth's legal team brought forward testimony, surveillance logs, bioreadings, proof that her decision saved lives and improved morale across the front. But the tribunal wasn't looking for the truth. They were looking for an example. In their eyes, Isla had made a dangerous precedent. She had put human ethics over council protocols. Worse, she had made them look weak. And in the great game of galactic politics, humans were still the newcomers. Tolerated but not yet trusted. So they delivered a verdict with cold, clinical detachment. Guilty on all counts, yet they didn't sentence her to death. That would have made her a martyr. Instead, they sentenced her to Sector D9, a remote prison moon known as the Maw, an ancient penal colony lost in a decaying binary star system. There were no guards, no walls, no contact with the outside. The place was infested with the worst convicts the galaxy had ever produced: murderers, warlords, mutants, and worse. Let her disappear, they said to everyone watching. It looked like exile, but Isla knew what it really was: an execution without a trigger. The trip to the Maw was deliberately brutal. Shackled in magnetic cuffs, isolated in a gravity-deprived cell, she spent days without proper food or light. Her armor was taken, her weapons destroyed. Her survival gear had been tampered with: failing seals, zero backup oxygen, corrupted AI systems. Even her neural comms were stripped from her skull. They were sending her to die alone. The final moments before her drop were cold and silent, standing on a small platform above the planet's surface, surrounded by blackened spires and boiling clouds. Isla said nothing. Not a single plea, not a scream. Just a quiet breath. The voice on the intercom crackled. Commander Isla Ren, for crimes against the Council, you are hereby sentenced to permanent exile. May your punishment be swift. End of transmission. And then the floor vanished. She plummeted through burning air and sulfur mist, gravity slamming into her like a hammer. For a moment, it felt like the stars themselves had turned their backs. But Isla wasn't broken. Not yet. As she descended, she thought of the 7,000 lives she saved, of the friends she buried, of the oath she took to defend the innocent, regardless of cost. If this was the cost, so be it. She slammed into the crust of the Maw. The last thing she saw before blacking out was the red glowing haze of a world that had eaten thousands before her, and had no idea what it had just swallowed. End of Part 1. Isla Ren awoke in pain. The ground beneath her was jagged and hot. the scent of sulfur and something far fouler burning in her nostrils. Blood pooled behind her ear. Her body ached from the impact. Her jump pack had been deliberately sabotaged, allowing for just enough deceleration to keep her alive, but not enough to protect her from pain. She was on the Maw now. The prison moon was unlike anything she had seen in war zones or death worlds. The terrain was jagged and unpredictable, with twisted metallic ruins peeking through layers of rock, fungus, and organic growths. It was said that the Maw had once been a scientific megastructure, swallowed by time and repurposed by monsters. Some parts looked half alive. Others buzzed with ancient, decaying machinery. But one thing was certain: this was not a prison with bars. It was a predator's paradise, and Isla was supposed to be the prey. Within the first few hours, they came for her. She had barely crawled to the edge of a cracked ravine when the first one emerged from the mist, a towering, reptilian brute with bioarmor fused into its flesh, a mouth wide enough to snap a human in half. It looked at her and hissed in amusement. "Fresh drop," it said in garbled trade common. "Human, soft skin, you'll scream well." More figures emerged. A skeletal creature with too many arms. A Kreth cannibal with metal claws instead of fingers. A half-dissolved scavenger dragging a bone saw. They weren't interested in stealing her gear. What little she had wasn't worth the trouble. They wanted entertainment. Isla staggered to her feet, bruised but not broken. Her survival suit was compromised, and her helmet visor was flickering. She had no weapon, no allies, no reinforcements. The Maw was made for people to die slowly, alone, and in terror, but they had miscalculated something vital. She was still. Isla Ren. The monsters surrounded her, laughing in their hissing, guttural tongues. One leapt first, a lunging Kreth slasher with jagged fangs and twitching mandibles. She dodged left, grabbed its wrist mid-strike, and twisted with all her weight. A wet snap. A howl. She tore its own broken arm free and stabbed it through its eye. The others roared and charged. The fight was brutal. She used rocks, bones, anything she could grab. She ducked under claws, rolled through acidic puddles, smashed her elbow into a skull until it cracked like glass. 17 seconds. That's all it took. When it was over, she stood alone. Bleeding, panting, covered in alien gore but alive. The corpses around her were a message. She didn't need to say a word. The Maw had just learned something new. This human wasn't prey. She was a predator. As she staggered away from the blood-soaked rocks, she began searching for salvage. She used fragments of armor and scrap to fashion a crude spear. Strips of alien skin became bindings. Sharp bone became blade. She wasn't building tools, she was rebuilding herself. Days passed. She moved through the maze-like ruins, observing everything. She mapped the tunnels in her head, watched the movement patterns of creatures, listened to the echoes in the corridors. She learned how the air pressure dropped near heat vents, how the fungal growths pulsed in time with subterranean geothermal waves. The Maw was more than a death trap. It was alive in ways science couldn't explain, but Isla had lived through worse. She had survived black hole proximity zones, psychic weapons, plague swarms, and enemy torture camps. The Maw was just one more trial. The difference? Here, there were no orders, no superiors, no politics. Just survival. And Isla excelled at that. On the 6th night, she lured another beast, this one with 6 legs and a sonar shriek, into a collapse trap she rigged from cracked ceiling struts. The walls caved in. Its spine snapped like dry wood. She didn't kill it out of need. She killed it to send a message. Using one of its bones, she carved a single word into the cavern wall. Alive. By now, whispers had begun. Rumors among the scavengers. The gangs, the mind-broken warlords who stalked the tunnels. A new killer walked the Maw. A Terran. A woman who should have died on day one. They called her the drop survivor. And the smartest ones. They started avoiding her. End of part 2. The maw was never quiet. It breathed, it echoed, and it whispered through its jagged tunnels with every footstep taken. For generations, the prison moon had been a place of savage routines, kill or be killed. Territories shifted constantly between gangs, beasts, and those who had long lost their sanity. But now, something had changed. Something terrifying was walking among them. It started as rumor. Like all things on the maw, a human fell and lived, said the scavenger packs. No gear, no weapons, just blood, and she walked away. Many laughed at first. A soft-fleshed Terran, alone in the maw? Impossible. But the corpses kept turning up, torn apart, burned, dismembered with surgical precision. Soon, the rumors gained a name, Isla Ren. Stories twisted and grew. Some said she was a ghost. Others said she had merged with the maw itself, becoming one of its cursed spirits. A few thought she was a weapon Earth had secretly dropped, some kind of living prototype. In the hidden chambers and war dens, creatures that had once torn fleets apart sat around fire pits made of broken armor and whispered her tales. She gutted a cracks with its own spinal blade. She set fire to the fungus field to burn out the night swarms. She hunted a merg beast for 3 days. When she dragged it back, it was missing its heart and its head. Even the strongest began to grow wary, but bravado still thrived. Not everyone feared a legend. A gang known as the Varnock Hounds, a brutal collective of ex-mercenaries and war criminals, heard the rumors and laughed. Their leader, a two-headed brute called Graxel the Devourer, declared Isla his next trophy. She is a myth, Graxel sneered, his voice echoing across a blood-stained cavern. Let us find her and show the maw who still rules. They moved. Quickly, 20 in total, all armed, all armored. They knew the terrain, the ambush points, the shortcuts through the fungal undergrowth, but Isla had been watching them for days. She knew their route. She had tracked their hunting patterns. She planted charges she'd made from salvaged drone cores and unstable fuel packs buried beneath leaves and dust. When the Varnock Hounds reached the ambush site, they found a camp that looked freshly abandoned. She's near, growled one of the scouts. They spread out. And then came the first explosion, a concussive blast that shattered 3 of their number against the cavern wall. A second followed, releasing a cloud of high-pitched sonic pulses that disoriented the pack, causing them to stumble and scream as blood ran from their ears. In the chaos, Isla struck. She moved like shadow, silent, fast, merciless. Her blade was made of welded creth metal and scavenged plasma conductors. It sang through the air, cutting cleanly through Graxel's second head before the brute even raised a weapon. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. Her face was smeared with blood and black ash, her armor pieced together from a dozen fallen enemies. She was the embodiment of adapted fury. 8 minutes. That was all it took. When the battle ended, the entire Varnock Hound pack was dead. Limbs scattered, bones shattered. She left one alive just long enough to crawl back to the outer tunnels and tell the story. On the wall behind her, Isla left a sign. Graxel's skull, pinned with a metal spike, bearing a single word carved into its cranium. Punishment. From that moment forward, no one laughed at the rumors. The legend of Isla Ren was no longer just whispered. It was feared. Some began to revere her. Broken prisoners and fringe exiles left offerings, scrap tech, food, even weapons at sites she'd passed. Some begged to join her, but she drove them off. Others plotted to assassinate her and steal her gear, but they never returned. Even the older beasts, those that had lurked in the depths of the maw for centuries, began to change their hunting patterns. Isla didn't just survive now, she controlled territory. She had power. And the maw? It had a new rule. Stay out of her path or become part of the legend. End of Part 3. By the third month of Isla Ren's exile, the Ma had changed. It wasn't visible from orbit, no lights, no signals, no structural shifts. But within the crumbling corridors and bio-infected tunnels, the ecosystem had tilted. The old balance of fear and dominance had been broken. For the first time in recorded memory, there was a center of gravity, a force that other predators moved around, avoided, or desperately sought to appease. That force was a human. Isla Ren had become the queen of the Maw, though she never called herself that. She had carved out territory deep in the geothermal zones of the moon beneath, a collapsed reactor dome where heat vents glowed with dim, hellish light and ancient Tarantech still hummed faintly. There, in the shadow of a long-dead fusion core, she built a haven not for peace, but for strategy. Every wall was reinforced with salvaged plates. Trap corridors were lined with pressure mines made from broken sentry drones. A perimeter of sharpened fungal spines marked the borders. And in the center, her throne, a slab of shattered armor backed by the skulls of Maw's worst. She didn't seek power. Power sought her. At first, it was individual solitary survivors, desperate and broken, who came begging for protection. Some brought offerings, weapons, water recyclers, information about enemy gangs. Isla accepted none of them. She had no interest in loyalty forged from fear, but others came who were stronger warlords, clan leaders, slavers. Some came to challenge her, thinking her victories had been exaggerated. They brought squads, beasts, weapons laced with toxins, none left alive. One particularly ambitious creature, Sral the Dagger-Tongue, declared his intention to enslave her and take her fortress. He sent his warriors in waves, hoping to wear her down. Isla met the first wave in silence. The second she flanked. The third she crushed from above, collapsing a section of ceiling she had wired with remote explosives days earlier. When she finally confronted Sral himself, she didn't fight him. She spoke. "You think I'm surviving, but you're wrong. I'm winning. You just haven't realized you're already part of the loss." Then she slit his throat and left his body hanging over the sulfur vents as a warning. Word spread this time not as myth, but as undeniable reality. Isla wasn't just a killer. She was a strategist, a tactician, and above all a leader. Not by choice, by force of nature. The Maw now had order, brutal as it was. Predator clans and scavenger nests stopped their endless infighting. Territory maps began to form, not around the strongest gang, but around Isla's influence. She didn't command anyone. She didn't need to. Creatures began using her symbols, a simple triangle with a line through it, to mark themselves as neutral under Isla's watch. These were often left unbothered by others. Patrols gave them wide berth. She found strange allies in the process. A mute cyborg prisoner named Hex began maintaining her perimeter mines in exchange for safety. An insectoid engineer, Trixic, helped reactivate an ancient atmospheric scrubber near her zone, making the air slightly more breathable. She even received a crude message from the Maw's deepest tunnel dwellers: "Your war is clean. You do not poison the balance. You may pass." That message came carved into the hide of a beast she'd hunted. But the most stunning shift came when kill squads stopped coming. At first, Isla believed it was a matter of logistics. The tribunal may have deemed her too isolated to matter. But then she intercepted a stolen drone signal data logs from an off-world command post. She wasn't forgotten. She was feared. Surveillance drones had captured footage of her dragging half-mechanical corpses, wearing armor stitched together from dozens of species. Her face a blank war mask under a cracked helmet. To the outside galaxy, she had become a threat too volatile to engage. They had tried to punish her. Instead, They had created a symbol of defiance, and that scared the council more than any weapon. She stared at the static-filled feed and smirked for the first time in weeks. Not out of joy, but out of satisfaction. She hadn't just survived exile. She had rewritten the rules of it, from a broken soldier to a myth, then a warlord, and now something else. The mall was hers, not because she wanted it, but because she had earned it in blood, flame, and silence. End of Part 4. 6 months after her exile, Commander Isla Ren stood on the rim of the upper geothermal platform, watching the dim horizon of the maw. The ash storms were quiet for now, the sulfur clouds pulsing in their slow, unnatural rhythm. Behind her, the camp she had carved out from ruin pulsed with light faint, but unmistakably human. She had not just survived exile. She had turned the maw into a fortress, a sanctuary, and a warning. Her legend had spread so far, it no longer needed her voice. The galaxy above had been watching, and now it was reacting. A Terran survey vessel, one not affiliated with the Galactic Council, had entered D9's orbit, unaware of the Tribunal's buried secrets. It was a standard resource. Sweep. They came expecting radiation, decay, and maybe ancient salvage. What they found was civilization. A camera drone had slipped through Isla's outer defenses. It recorded images that stunned Earth's high command. Complex traps built from alien tech. Cooperative groups of species that, under any normal circumstance, would be tearing each other apart. Order. And at the center of it all, Isla Ren, wrapped in armor stitched from 10 fallen worlds, standing at the helm of the most dangerous place in the galaxy. The footage leaked. The effect was immediate. Earth erupted in protest. Veterans demanded to know why their war hero had been thrown into exile. Colonies that owed their survival to her actions held rallies in her name. Politicians scrambled for deniability. The council issued weak statements. The tribunal went silent. Terran High Command responded the only way it could, with force. A fleet arrived above D9 within the week, led not by warships, but by a diplomatic flagship. They didn't come to invade. They came to bring Isla home. Her first instinct was to refuse. She had survived the betrayal, built something that could last. Why go back to the same galaxy that had tried to throw her away? But Isla didn't think just of herself anymore. She thought of the message this could send to prisoners, to survivors, to humans and aliens alike. You can rise from the pit they throw you in. You can become something bigger. So she walked to the extraction site alone. She left behind no army, no ceremony, only warnings scrawled into the walls, booby traps left dormant, and a legend burned deep into the maw's stone. When she stepped aboard the Terran ship, the crew stared at her with awe. The hardened Marines saluted her, not by rank, but by instinct. Some whispered her name. Others looked away, ashamed that she'd ever been cast out. In the debriefing chamber, an Earth admiral stood waiting, flanked by politicians with carefully prepared statements. He tried to speak, but Isla simply walked up, stared him down, and said, cold and clear, "If that was punishment, imagine what I'll do when I'm truly angry." The room fell silent. The tribunal was quietly dissolved weeks later. The Galactic Council erased all records of her sentencing. In its place, Earth issued a new medal, the Maw Star, awarded only once to Isla Ren, but her story didn't end in a medal ceremony. She declined all reinstatement offers. Instead, she requested command of a new unit composed of exiles, survivors, and those deemed irreparable by Council standards. Fighters who knew what it meant to be abandoned, her condition. Full autonomy. Earth agreed quietly and without hesitation. She named the unit Black Maw Company. Their motto was a phrase etched into every surface of their gear. They called it punishment, And every battlefield they walked into? The enemy would soon understand the second half of that phrase. She turned it into a massacre. In the shadows of the galaxy, monsters still whisper of the Maw, of the woman who fell into their world like a discarded relic and rose again as their queen, executioner, and reckoning. The message she left behind was simple. You can break. Person, you can exile them. But some spirits? You only make more dangerous. End of part 5.